my man, Vikram, I knew that this was going to be one of my favorite podcasts.
Yeah, you have a man crush on Chris.
Chris is running such a cool operation, and Chris comes from like a corporate background, and I come from a corporate background. And Sharon connected me and Chris probably about 6 to 8 months ago, and we like sat on Zoom and we chatted for like 6 months. I picked his brain on what he was doing with Zillow and what he was doing with his team, and how things were kind of like rolling out a rotation with agents, and how he is holding agents to a high level of standard.
Yep.
If you are a real estate team lead, you need to watch this podcast.
If you are a human being that is in real estate, you should watch this podcast, because he will teach you how to manage yourself, which is one of the biggest problems in real estate.
And also manage the team. Like I think there was some key concepts around how he holds his team accountable. And I think that it's black and white, and it's KPI driven. Yep. And I think you're getting a ton of value out of this podcast. What were some things that you got out of the podcast?
Just watch the podcast, you guys. If you don't know Chris Speicher, like if you don't know the Speicher Group, if you don't know what him and his wife have been building for the last decade, just watch the podcast. Like,
watch the podcast.
It'll give you all sorts of nuggets on KPIs, on CRMs, on tracking, on finances, things that people don't talk about. And you'd be doing yourself a disservice to not spend 45 minutes with a notepad and pen to watch this one.
Yep, 100%. Let's hop into the show. You're listening to the #1 real estate podcast in the world, where we talk with real estate professionals about their wins, losses, lessons, and stories, help you win in your local market today. My name's Cody from Sheridan Street. I'm joined with my good friend, Vikram Deol from the Real Estate Sales Academy and the co-host of the RE Agent podcast. Man, I like the white shirt. You're just looking so fine today. Like, you're looking good.
Is it because my knee keeps touching? You're touching my knee, or is my knee touching your knee?
I think it's a little bit of both.
It's
exciting.
I'm aroused this whole day. I had explosive diarrhea last night.
Okay.
And I am now aroused the whole day, and I'm excited, and it's been fun. And I'm actually really excited to just jump in. What is this?
Podcast number? A heck of a way to kick off a podcast, though.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the realest of the real.
You never know what you're going to get with Vikram, and that's the thing. Like, I've learned to accept it, and it is what it is.
It's what Sharon has done. He's accepted the brown boy for who he is, and he's just very close to the mute button whenever I'm on a Zoom with him.
I need to find out where that mute button is.
Probably.
We are pumped for our guest today. I've known Chris now, what did we met? Tom Ferry in 2014, 13, 12?
Long time ago, yeah. Probably 12. Yeah, right in there.
Yeah. So I've watched you expand. I've watched you grow. I've admired you from afar. I've admired you from a close. We've had the opportunity to jam a little bit. We met through Sharon and Tom, and you were always doing such amazing things behind the scenes. And you're kind of like you're the secret weapon, I would call it. You're the secret weapon to the front end of the sales machines, because your ability to take seemingly complex issues to grow businesses and simplify them and systematize them and process them is amazing. But you're also just a really cool human being, outside of when you're making fun of Cody, which I do not appreciate at all. But Chris, dude, where first off, where are you at in the world right now? Because I know you have 3 teams in 3 different states and 3 different countries.
Yep. So 3 teams, 3 states. We cover 4 states in the District of Columbia, but I am on West Maui. That's where we're actually, this month will be 5 years out here. We run the company from out here, and we have a team out here, as well as a team that serves kind of the greater Baltimore, Washington market, then a team that serves the vacation market there, so the Maryland and Delaware beaches, and then here on West Maui.
And what would you say is your superpower? And then what would you say, before Cody starts asking you questions that might be over my head, what would you say is your superpower? And what would you say is a superpower that teams need to have going into 2023?
Wow. It's a big truck going by in the background, so I apologize for that. Let's see. My superpower is probably kind of the simplification of operations. I think that a lot of people and a lot of teams overcomplicate processes and procedures when it doesn't have to be. And And that's one of the beauties of my role within the organization is I don't work with clients. So I am completely behind the scenes. And with a product development and software background, it's very easy for me to see solutions to complex problems and simplify them. So I think that's my superpower. For teams, it's probably focusing on financial best practices, profitability. And I think one of the things that we tend to focus on, and I learned this from Greg Schwartz when he was at Zillow, is we focus our time and energy on making our best agents better, as opposed to focusing on the bad agents or the agents that aren't doing well and trying to get them to be mediocre agents. We simply replace them. And that might sound a little harsh, but it's not after coaching and accountability and helping them. But
you guys have a very, very thorough process that I have seen outlines of. And so you guys, he's not like, oh, if they're not performing for 1 month, there is a process that is pretty sexy to try to revive people, but you focus on so continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, focusing on your good and your great to get them better. And I mean, our process, we try to weed that out at the beginning. We have 5 rounds of interviews. We do background checks. We do credit checks. We do all kinds of stuff. You're in a mentorship program. So, but I think that is the key for teams right now, is to focus on, it'd be much easier for me to help my top 8 agents go from 30 transactions to 45 or 50. My top agent will do 65 this year, than helping my agents who are doing 12 to get to 15. And it helps me a lot more too. So really focusing on that.
Finances?
Yeah.
Finances.
No, I think that, Chris and I because of Sharon, we got connected and we had a long conversation probably about 6-7 months ago around where it's kind of got pick your brain around what's happening in the real estate industry, different trends. And we've seen a lot of change even from that time we had that conversation 6 to 8 months ago, where at that point in time, things were still very interesting in the market. Like things were the first half of 2022, teams were having a great year. And then the back half of 2022 and into now, I'm speaking with a lot of real estate teams that are just really struggling and really scaling back their operations. I'm really curious to know from you, you're managing different teams from a totally different market, and you're running high volume, and you're also, serving real estate at such a high level, when the vast majority of real estate team leads are scaling back their operations. And it seems like you have everything dialed into a point where, you're still growing. So I'm curious to know kind of what advice would you give to that team lead that is they don't want to scale back their operations, but they're being forced to because their production has decreased from 22.
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult situation to be in. And I think that a lot of that, and I'm not taking anything away from anybody, I think a lot of that speaks to a lot of team leaders, kind of financial management and how they manage their portfolio of savings and where they are. If real estate completely stopped right now, we could continue to operate for several years, right? And I think if you're not in that kind of healthy position, that's kind of poor management. I've seen it since day one of being in this business, people who either aren't paying their taxes or are one commission check away from being out of business or whatever the case may be. But, if you have a strong financial kind of portfolio in your business, and the reason we do that, not only does it help me sleep at night, but, we kind of subscribe to the Warren Buffett philosophy of when everybody's getting out, we're getting in. I mean, we are hiring, we're doing new lead generation systems. When people are pulling out of Zillow, we're going bigger in Zillow, because I know that people have to move. And I also know that people are getting out of the business. So I can at least keep my pie the same, if not grow it, in a time like this. So if they are not in that position, though, they need to take a long, hard look at finances and conversion ratios and team members and expenses. And they might have to have difficult conversations. Like if team members are not profitable, they might not be able to keep them around, because if you can spend less money on lead generation, but be more profitable, having less people on the team, that's a really solid way to go right now, as opposed to trying to keep everybody fed. And it's a tough position to be in sometimes, but you're running a business. You're not running a charity.
You and I went really deep into conversion metrics, and I've chatted with so many real estate team leads, and like you're a big Zillow proponent. We've had that conversation around Zillow, and it's working for you, but you guys have everything dialed in. Like, what are some of the things that when we're looking at lead pillars and we're looking at even something like Zillow? I have a fundamental belief. Me and Sharon share this belief. Like, everything works. It just all takes time, skill, and volume. And you guys have managed to make Zillow work, where you're like, now, like you said, you're doubling down on Zillow, and you're doubling down on other lead gen systems. Like, what are some things that you see through coaching real estate team leads, or being in the industry, or working in product development, that real estate team leads are just lacking when it comes to conversion, or when it comes to making a program that does work for other people like you, and then you have other agents that say, no, Zillow doesn't work in my area. What are some of the things that you would say to those agents, and what are some of the things that you would do in order to say, hey, these lead pillars do actually work? Like, Zillow does work. It's just a matter of like us watching different metrics. Like, what are some things that you guys are doing in order to watch those things?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it boils down to what's your return. Like, I mean, and I had this conversation, 10 years ago about Zillow, right? If I'm spending $400,000 a year on Zillow, but I'm making $1 million a year, I'll go spend $4 million a year on Zillow, because, I'll make 10 million. Like, I think that's where people get hung up is it actually profitable for me? And I think that it becomes very ego driven. If it's not, but it is for others, why? And they need to be able to look into the mirror and say, okay, so maybe I am screwing some things up, or maybe I'm not measuring the correct metrics, or maybe my team is not saying the right things. And I think that, people just say, oh, it doesn't work. It's different in my market, which, by the way, it is different in Hawaii, but it is not different in any other market that I have seen. But they really need to spend the time and maybe talk to team leaders or brokerages that run these systems. I haven't seen many brokerages run it correctly, but, team leaders, and talk about, how do you hold your team accountable? What are the metrics that you follow? What are the determining factors to determine whether your agents are in or out of lead rotation? What should an ROI be? How many leads should they be having conversations with, showing homes, writing contracts, getting to closings? Like, we have goals for each of those. And we actually have our agents in and out of rotation on a weekly basis based on those goals. And if you're not, listen, again, I would trust, and this is one of my, I guess, favorite sayings that I've said from stage a lot of times, is I would trust every single person on my team with the key to my home, but I'm also running a business. So I have no problem going to somebody who I trust with the key to my home and saying, you're no longer getting leads until you get these numbers back in line. And like I said, we do that weekly. So I could have an agent that's in rotation this week, and Monday they're out until they get the numbers straight. So it's accountability. It's knowing what your targets are. It's being able to also execute and act on those, I think, is where a lot of team leaders fall down, is the execution.
Can you dig into, because you and I had an opportunity to chat about this in such detail, like, you have out of rotation. Can you dig a little bit deeper into that? Because I know that we dug in deeper into it when we had that conversation around, like, you have the major leagues that have access to the Zillow leads, you have the minor leagues. Like, can you explain to us kind of how that operates within your team and how you've been able to see success doing that?
Sure. So we've got, it's kind of silly, but we've got a gold, silver, bronze, and they're based on the leads that come in each of those categories are based on price points. So without it in front of me, I should know it off the top of my head, but let's just say for the Maryland market, the gold is 700 and above, the silver is below 700, and the bronze is out of rotation. And if you qualify for gold, you also qualify for silver. But you've got to hit your conversion metrics. You've got to have your call rate metrics up. You've got to have your CSAT up. You've got to have CRM hygiene has to be out of this world. So the people who continually convert and do the right things. And the interesting thing is, right, if you do all the stuff that I actually measure, you live in the gold tier. If you don't do all the stuff that I preach and I measure and I hold you accountable for, you're not going to qualify. Not because I'm going to take you out of rotation for doing those things, but I will, but your conversion is going to fall. And I think that's the ironic thing. Like, just do what I tell you to do and you will live in the gold tier forever. But if you don't do it and you don't keep the CRM clean and you don't pick up the phone and you don't make the calls and you don't put the notes in, you're gonna fail. So those measurements, the gold, silver, bronze, are measured on a monthly basis based on all those criteria. The in and out of rotation for new leads is based on your flex conversion, which we measure on a monthly basis, but the last 6 months, kind of a rolling conversion number. So we do a lot of tracking and measuring, and also there are non-negotiables on the team. Like I have a weekly flex, kind of an accountability form that everybody needs to fill out on Sunday before our Monday meeting. And it's simply, how many new leads did you take? What is the status of them? What are the next steps? Because I need them to focus on the new leads that are coming in and stay focused on them. And listen, if we have our accountability call on Monday and you haven't filled it out, you're out of rotation for a week. And there is no, and I said it with the team, there's no emotion in this. Like, I like you. You're a good person, but you didn't fill out your form. You're out of rotation for a week. I've got somebody who's now out of rotation for his 3rd week. He just forgets to fill out the form. I don't care what your conversion is. We have rules on the team. So, I mean, it's a lot of accountability. It's a lot of tracking. It's a lot of measuring, but I put the responsibility of those kind of the measuring and the tracking and that kind of stuff on my team members, and they feed it to me. So I kind of get the dashboards, and then I make the call of you're in or you're out. But we're really strict with that stuff, and people want the high price leads. People want those. So when they get demoted from gold to silver, they're pissed, and I get it. I would be too. So I'm like, listen, get back. Here are the steps. Here's why you're out. Here are the steps to get back. You have a month. Do it. So, you know, I think the fundamental challenge is not all, but most team leaders don't run their teams like a business. And it's a business.
Run on emotion.
Yeah, they run on emotion. They run on friendship. They run on, oh, well, I don't know where that lead went. I didn't really track it. I mean, Tom's been preaching it for years, right? Dashboards and KPIs and track and measure the success and report on it. Like, unless you do that, you don't know the health of your organization. And then what happens is what we were talking about earlier, right? You're now hemorrhaging money, but you don't know why. And now you're going to try to figure out all the tracking and measuring, and you're like, oh, that's been happening for a year, or that's been happening for 6 months. Like, you got to do it all the time. I mean, there are no successful organizations out there that don't have the tracking, the measuring, and the performance standards that are successful. They just don't. I mean, you want to go to the top, like Apple and Tesla and Google and all those companies, you know, there are layers upon layers upon layers of tracking and measuring to make them successful. And if we don't do it, we won't be.
I have a question for you about tracking and measuring, because I know you have such sexy dashboards. What programs, or how did you, because real estate, there's a lot of CRMs, there's a lot of cool things out there, but when it comes to tracking and measuring, there's just not a lot of great stuff out there in real estate. And, you know, I don't know why, because there's every other thing out there, but how would a team leader who has tracked basically nothing, they're hemorrhaging money, they're spending money on, you know, whether it be with Cody or it would be Zillow or it would be with XYZ company, what are 3 to 5 metrics that you think are non-negotiables that they really need to track so that they understand whether or not they're profitable? Because I've talked to team leads and they're like, yeah, we made $600,000 last year. I'm like, you netted 600? They're like, well, no, our GCI was 600. I'm like, okay, what was your net? Like, well, we paid taxes on. I'm like, no, that's not your net. That's your tax liability. Like, what's your net? They have no idea. They're just like, they work out to be making very little money at the end of the year. And they're like, holy shit, you know, and they don't know. So what would be some metrics in your opinion? Because you do run 3 teams, you have consulted dozens, if not hundreds, if not multiples of hundreds of teams that you think they should do. And where should that live for a team that's got 3 or 4 agents and maybe a VA or 2 or an admin? Where should that live so that it's something they can implement in the next 90 days?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It doesn't exist. Mine lives in a spreadsheet. I mean, it does.
A Google sheet.
Google sheet. I cannot find any and there are great pieces of software out there that do data visualization and tracking, and that's fine. But when I'm tracking to such a granular specific level for each of my team members, it lives in a spreadsheet, and it lives in multiple spreadsheets depending on what I'm tracking. First and foremost is ROI by lead source. If you can't demonstrate a return on that investment, you are completely flying blind. Like you shouldn't invest in it unless you can track it. Then there's of course profitability, and Vikram, it's funny you say that. There is an agent that I am close with that confided in me, it was about 2 years ago, that this agent had done, I think it was 600,000 or 800,000 in GCI with their team, and I'm being very vague on gender and everything. And that agent told me that they actually netted less than $22,000 that year. I'm like, well, why are you running a team? Like if you went out and sold 2 homes on your own as a solo agent, you would dwarf that. Like what in the world? And that's, I think that goes back to the ego conversation kind of we had a few months ago. It's ego. I did this much in volume. I did this much in GCI. I made this much money. I made this. I was in the top this and the top that, and I made this criteria, and I got this gold, diamond, platinum award. Like, I don't care. How much money did you make? You're right on. Yeah. How much money did you take home? Because at the end of the day, I measure my success as a business owner by my net income year over year. Period. End of story. I do not care about anything else. And the ways to move the needle on net income are income and expenses. And if you're not tracking income and expenses, especially expenses, what's the point? What is so ROI, expenses? I mean, you could go old school, like, Tom Ferry 10, 11 years ago, right? Go through your credit card statement. Where are you spending money? What are those recurring charges? What, if you're spending X on this lead generation source or this coaching or that consulting, how much have you made from it? You tell me. So, I mean, ROI, conversion, expenses, and then I think it's conversion and ROI by person. If you've got somebody who's just not making you money, they might be your best friend. They might be somebody you enjoy going to happy hour with. They might be great at conferences. Whatever the case may be, you're not their parent. You're not supporting them. You make a change.
Let me ask you this question, because a lot of it, we just had a really cool guy on last podcast, and he said it's really not you that needs to have the fierce conversation. You just say, hey, here's your numbers. What would you do? And then they bury themselves and they say, well, we probably would say we should leave, or we should, be put on a 3-month probation and do something. What is your conversation like with agents that are underperforming for a significant period of time after they've been, like, I guess your agents wouldn't perform for a significant period of time, but what are your conversations when it's kind of like that exit conversation? Because I had a client that we knew that the mother-daughter combo needed to go 7 months prior, and we worked on the exact thing to say. She didn't have the metrics, but they weren't performing, and she just couldn't let them go. And it finally came to a point where she had no more money left. She didn't go into the office anymore. She was depressed, and these two were running amok of the office, moving furniture around, doing whatever they wanted. It was insane. And I was like, you have to get this under control. But she just couldn't. She couldn't bring herself to the conversation, Chris. And I was like, I will do it for you. And she's like, no, I can't. I'm like, this is insane. How do you get a team leader that loves their people, that doesn't want to hurt anybody? How do you have that conversation for that type of person? Because, I think there's a lot more of those that are, we don't want to hurt people, than there are people like you who are just like, it's black and white.
Yeah. I mean, the decision itself has to be black and white. We never let somebody go based on a feeling, right? It is based on a black and white. Here were the goals. Here are the expectations. You have not met them. Here's what you signed up for. I mean, by the time I let somebody go, literally the conversation is 3 or 4 minutes. And it comes across as pretty brutal. And by the time it happens, people know that it's coming, right? Like, hey, things aren't working out. Appreciate your time on the team. We wish you all the best. By the way, as you hang up this call, your access to Gmail and Boomtown and everything will be gone. They're like, oh shit. But I mean, the place that they need to be mentally and emotionally is, I'm not going bankrupt and I'm not losing money and I am not supporting you. You are not my child. This is a business. And I wouldn't do, if this was somebody off the street, I wouldn't just go hand money to somebody on the street and say, hey, good luck. And I'm not going to, I know a lot of people, I'm not going to sacrifice my house payment, my car payment, my tax liability for anybody. And they need to be able to treat it like that. But I love what your one person said is, hey, here's where we are. Here is how it looks financially for me. Tell me what you would do if you were me. I love that. I never have to get to that conversation because we've done the remedial training up to that point and they know it's coming, like I said, but I love that. Put it back on them. You have cost me X. Here's where I am because of it. What would you do if you were me? And listen, they only have 2 options, right? Which is to be honest and say, I'd fire me. And if they said anything else other than that, based on what you just said to them, they're selfish. And then you can fire them based on them being selfish. But it's not, here's the other thing when it comes to letting somebody go. This business and profession is not like other businesses and professions. When I say, hey, Vic, it's not working out, you got to roll, you can say, great, I'm going to go hang my license with the brokerage next door and keep going. It's not like you need to put together a resume. You need to put your stuff on Monster. You need to interview. You need to do all this stuff. Brokerages make money based on headcount. You can go hang your license with 50 other brokerages within 20 miles of your current office. And if you're on good terms with me, I just let somebody go 2 weeks ago, and I let my managing broker in my office know, hey, that person's good. They're just not good for me. Keep them in the office. It's fine. And they did that. So I think also having that knowledge that, yes, you're no longer part of my team. Yes, you're no longer going to get leads. Yes, you don't have access to Boomtown and email and all that stuff. You can still go work tomorrow. Just go affiliate somewhere else. That really sets my mind at ease when I have to do that, because they can still practice real estate. Cool.
Yeah. I love that approach because it's a good reminder. And especially in real estate, it's like they could just go to another brokerage and they could still thrive. And maybe they thrive more with another team because they jive more with the vision and where the person's going. So I 100% appreciate that. I'm curious, what you look for in a high performing agent. As a team lead, what are some things that team leads should be looking for when they're hiring? Because you mentioned that you go through a rigorous process of 5 different interviews before considering to bring them on the team. Do you have a system that you use in order to assess whether somebody is actually going to be a high performing agent? Or is it you throw them in and you put them through a probation period? What does that process look like for you?
Yeah. So I consider myself a pretty good read of character. So my initial call is, are you intelligent and can you hold a conversation? If you're intelligent and articulate, I can probably make you successful. So mine is, are you intelligent? Are you articulate? And then let's talk about your background and why you're talking to me right now. That's what I want to know. And I have cut interviews short 60 seconds in. I've cut them short 4 minutes in. Some of them have gone 2 hours, right? Because I enjoy the conversation, but I can't fix stupid and I can't fix inarticulate, right? I need, if is inarticulate a word? Whatever it is. I can't fix those 2 things. So that's what I look for. And then we go through a series of interviews where people look for different things. So if I say, all right, you're intelligent, articulate, you're not an axe murderer, I think you're pretty cool. I like your background. You weren't fired for ethical or legal reasons, whatever the case may be. You then interview with my director of client success. You interview with my director of customer experience, and you interview with one of my agents who I believe is a similar personality type to you. So you interview with all three of those people. Could be a Zoom, one-on-ones, group, happy hour, lunch, breakfast, I don't care. Here's the difference is if one of those persons says no, one of those people say no, I don't move on from there. So every single person on my team has a 100% veto vote. So if my director of client success says, hey, I don't think this person's a good fit, I don't need a reason. We stop the process. So we modeled that after the old days of Tony Hsieh and Zappos, where they would actually bring in their C-level employees and they would interview the van driver from the airport or the limo driver from the airport. Was the person rude? Was the person respectful? How did they treat you? If the answer was they treated me like shit, even if it was a C-level employee, they didn't make the job offer. If you get through all four of those, so me and the three people on the team, you then meet with Peggy Lynn, who's the team leader and the face of the company, and she digs into the why. And she digs into the personal reasons that you want to be successful. She digs into the emotional side of things. Then all five of us get back together. And if all five of us are a yes, then we move forward with the process. If one person is a no, like I said, we stop. And that kind of creates extreme ownership for all my people within the organization, that they feel like they have a vested interest in the team and protecting the team members. As a team leader, I think the most important role that I have is protecting the brand and the people on the team. That's my most important role. And I can figure out the financial stuff. I mean, those are spreadsheets, but protecting the brand and protecting the people that we currently have on the team is my most critical job. So bringing somebody new onto the team is a really big deal because you're introducing somebody into the family. And if I do a bad job vetting those individuals, I'll bring poison into the family, and I'm not willing to do that. It's the reason we only have 12 or 13 agents after all these years in the business, because I'm not taking anything away from any large teams, that we're extremely, extremely picky on who we bring into the team. So much so that I have a pretty sizable bonus for my agents if they bring somebody onto the team that makes it through the probation period. I've probably only gotten 5 referrals for people on the other sides of these transactions in the past several years because they're like, they wouldn't be a good fit. They wouldn't be a good fit. I mean, it's shocking, but I appreciate that for my team. Like, hey, they wouldn't fit in with us. So I don't remember the original question, but I'm going to stop.
The culture protects the culture too, though, because of the way your process is so integrated. Everybody protects everybody. It's kind of cool.
And then you're a mentor for your first 5 transactions. I mean, and that you're responsible. You're responsible for reporting into that mentor, going on appointments together, working the CRM together, going on listing appointments, going on buyers appointments, practicing scripts, role play dialogue. You also have that responsibility to my director of customer experience, so kind of my head ISA. You have weekly calls. And if you're not coming to those calls prepared, and if you're not following up in the CRM and you're not doing all that, you're not going to make it through the probation period, the mentorship period. So we're hardcore during that period too. I unfortunately just had to let somebody go 60 days into their, 90 days into their mentorship program because that person simply refused to get on board with scripts and dialogue. And, I got together with those two and Peggy Lynn, we jumped on a call and, what we talked about, right? Nobody likes to make the decision. Nobody likes to make the call. And finally, it was like 3 minutes into the call, I'm like, all right, stop, raise your hand if this person isn't a good fit. And all three of them did this. I'm like, all right, that's all I need. We don't need to debate it.
Right.
Yeah.
When it comes to, just because you have so much knowledge and I want to dive into your brain and all aspects of it, when it comes to mentorship, right? When it comes to this mentorship program you talk about, there's a lot of agents out there who unfortunately have been given misadvice, or they've been told by other agents, oh, you just need to go out there and just do it and call your sphere and call your uncle and your grandma and, go walk the dog in the neighborhood and talk to people while they're, cleaning up the poop and stuff. That doesn't work, right? We know that doesn't work. And this is the only industry where people don't lead gen and pay for it and have a budget right out the gate. Like no other industry does that I've been a part of. Like we've always advertised. How would you talk to an agent who was successful, maybe a couple of years ago when the market was good. And now that the market's shifted, their skills might not have kept up with, because the market was good, they might not have had the time or made the time, or their brokerage didn't teach them. And, a lot of times it's not quite their fault that they don't know, but it is their fault that they're broke. What can somebody do if they're not on a team, or if they are on a team? Like, how do they pivot back into success? Because they understand transactions, they understand the process, they just don't understand the front end of filling the funnel.
Yeah, I mean, if I was talking to somebody who wasn't on a team, I'd say join a team, and join a reputable team, because I think that, it's funny we talk about this still. I think the number one challenge in real estate still is filling the pipeline. And as time goes on, it gets more expensive and more difficult to fill the pipeline. And listen, can you put on a name tag and go to the dog park and go to the coffee shop and call your uncle and generate business? Yes. Is it sustainable for the long term, and can you be wildly successful? Probably not. So I would find somebody to help you get back to the basics. Like, you do go to the dog park and you get a listing or a buyer. What do you do? How do you get referrals from that? What do you say to that person to generate additional business? Because it's not about the transaction. We're going to rock out the transaction because I've got a transaction team. What do I do during the transaction to generate additional business? That's where the key to all of this is. And if you're in a difficult financial position, I think that the team is the way to go. And that's what I've always said. When people are like, "Well, what are your splits on the team?" and they're not high, but I'm also like, well, they have no expenses. So you put somebody on a 90% split and then add in tens of thousands of dollars a month in expenses and talk to me about what their net split is, because it's very different. So if you're already on a team, I'd ask, what do you think you're missing? What is the team providing you to help you move the needle from where you are to where you want to be? Are you doing scripts? Are you doing role play? Are you working on dialogue? Are you shadowing somebody who's successful? Are you shadowing somebody in their CRM that is killing it to see what they're doing that's different than what you do? We've always said the same thing, which is, and it's just shocking that people can't be successful in my head some days, is if you do what I ask you to do 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 10 hours a week, you will be wildly successful. But you have to do that 10 hours a week. You have to. And if you do that, you're going to kill it. But people just sometimes don't do it, or sometimes don't do it when they're busy, or don't do it when they've got a lot of homes under contract or in escrow. And that creates the kind of the up and down, up and down, up and down. But if you can come up with that time block or that time boxing that says, hey, these 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 90 minutes, whatever it is, are non-negotiable. And you're providing amazing value to the people that are in your pipeline. And I equate it to fishing, right? If you were a fisherman and you threw one line in the water and then you just reeled it in one at a time, you're not going to catch anything. If you throw 10 lines in the water and you're reeling 3 in, you got another 7 lines in the water, or throw 3 more lines out so you always have 10 in the water. And I know the fishermen will be like, oh, when you got one on, you bring all the other lines in. I get it. But you always have to be fishing. And if you're always throwing hooks in the water, you're always going to be catching fish. But if you don't do that, or you take a few days off or a couple of weeks off, or you got 2 in escrow and you're not doing the fishing, you're not going to do it. So I think a lot of it is you need to be consistent. You need to really work on the fundamentals. You need to really work on the blocking and tackling of what you do on a daily basis. And it's extremely difficult for most people to work from home. It's extremely difficult for most people to be in a position where they're independent contractor, because you're not a salaried employee. I can't tell you to come in from 9 to 5:30 and from 9 to 11, here's what you're going to do. If I did, you'd be successful, but you're an independent contractor. You're going to need to do it on your own. And I'm going to measure the end result of that. So if your end results aren't there, I can guarantee you're not doing this. So, I mean, I think it's getting back to the basics when it comes to that kind of stuff. And that's what wins.
Before Cody asks this question, just a quick follow-up. Real estate's a long game, right? So your Zillow leads, or maybe your now leads, right? Or your closer, your open houses are more of your now. What is your quick structure on, like, how do you label your future clients in your guys' CRM?
So in Boom,
what's the timelines, and what's the timelines that you A, B, C, whatever you do?
Yeah, generally speaking, it's who's going to transact within 90 days, who's going to transact in 90 days to 6 months, and then who's 6 months and longer. Especially now because the market's shifting so quickly. If you tell me you're looking for, and this is going to sound crazy, but Vic, you're from SoCal, so it won't sound that crazy, right? If you're looking for a starter single-family home on West Maui with an ocean view and you've got a $2 million budget, I can find you something. Can I find you that in 6 months? I don't know. It might be tough. So it's kind of like who's ready to go now, who's that mid-range, like between kind of 90 days and 6 months, and then who's further than that. Further than that, I just don't know what the market's going to do. But we'll put you on an e-alert. We'll keep in touch with you. We also have an interesting structure where I know that agents will focus on the lowest hanging fruit. I'm tired of fighting that. I got tired of fighting that years and years and years ago. Like, that's in your nature. You're a salesperson. You're going to focus on the money, which I finally came around and was like, you know what? That makes sense. Focus on the money. So my agents actually have the ability in our structure to send those leads back to my customer experience team, and they will do the long-term nurturing since they're on the phone and on their computers all day long. And then when that person gets hot again, they go back to that same agent. So I've kind of got a kind of built-in nurturing structure for my agents so they don't have to focus on the 6 months or more. They can focus on the people who are ready to write offers because that's where the money is. And that's actually where I want them focusing. So that 2 hours a day is focusing on the people who are ready or the people who might be 6 months to a year, but you've established a pretty solid relationship with, and you don't want to give back. So if like 1 or 2 hours a day, you're focusing on those people who are getting close to or ready to write or hot or, calculating mortgages on the CRM or favoriting things and doing all that, you're going to win. But if you're spending that 2 hours a day talking to somebody who's going to be a year after transact, I'd argue that you're not going to win.
I want to close up here with scripts, because I think that this is something that you guys have nailed, and we chatted a lot about around role playing and scripting. And there's so many different philosophies, especially in the real estate space, because I hear a lot of coaches out there preaching, sphere of influence, and you guys have taken more of a approach of like, hey, we're gonna run an actual lead gen system with Zillow and with other platforms, and really try to find people that we don't know and that we can connect with and we can win business. What would you say to somebody who is just maybe potentially wants to use a script or reluctant to using a script? How can you get them to understand that this will greatly impact their results?
I mean, listen, if you want the most simple script of all time, when would you like to see the home? Like, all of these new leads that come in have one goal. It's one goal. They want to see a home. So, I mean, you can talk about LP Mama and Ford and all that good stuff. That's awesome for the people who are transacting in 6 months. Let's talk about location and price and motivation and all that good stuff and family and occupation. I get it. I totally get it. But they have contacted us because they have raised their hand and said, I want to see 123 Main Street. Get them in the house. I mean, listen, you could be the best agent on the planet. You could be the worst agent on the planet. It is completely irrelevant when they contact you to see 123 Main Street. They want you to open the door. Open the door and then figure out the relationship from there, and then figure out the motivation, and then figure out the timeline. Show them the house. We open up every single conversation the exact same way. Hey, Vikram, Zillow let me know this is Chris from the Speicher Group of Long and Foster Real Estate. Zillow let me know you're interested in 123 Main Street. When would you like to see the home? Just ask them. And I think, Cody, to your point, what people don't get is that the new people, the magic isn't in the first 3, 4, 5 years of doing this, although you'll do well. The magic is 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now, all of the people that you simply said, when would you like to see the home, are now transacting again. So now you're getting the new leads and the repeat referral business. And if you provide a great customer service with them, they're also referring 1 or 2 people to you. So that's where the magic starts to happen. But the scripts, holy shit. When would you like to see the home? That's it. There's really not much to it other than that, because that's why they're raising their hand. That's why they're talking to you. I mean, it is not rocket science. It really isn't.
Well, you heard it here. When would you like to see the home? Chris, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for just unpacking so much gold that I think any real estate team lead, any any real estate agent could get so much value from, especially team leads out there that are just in this moment of time where they're trying to find ways to make things work. And you just so eloquently broke it down today. And I just want to say thank you. Now, if somebody were to want to reach out to you, want to have a conversation or want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, where's kind of the best place that we can send them to kind of hear a little bit more about what you're doing?
Yeah. Speichergroup.com is the best way to do it. And it's S as in Sam, P as in Paul, EICHER group.com. So speichergroup.com. And if you want to email me directly, it's chris@speichergroup.com. That's the easiest way to do it. And then I can, I'm happy to have conversations and kind of go from there. But that's our main website. We've got one for Maui. We've got another one, but that has all my contact information and kind of has all of our stuff. So speichergroup.com would be the place to go.
Chris, want to say thank you.
Let me preface that by saying, if you call me, I won't answer. I don't answer my phone ever. You can text me, you can email me, but if you call me, I'm not going to answer.
Don't call it.
It's a waste of time.
I'm that guy. I don't answer the phone.
Yeah. Hey, that's fair.
There are a lot of smart people who don't answer their phone unsolicitedly.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you for tuning into another episode of the RE Agent Podcast, the #1 real estate podcast in the world. We'll see you soon.